So, what are we looking at today? Well, this is basically the blueprint for Russia's future. It's a massive 15-year master plan designed to really dominate the Arctic, and it stretches all the way to 2035. Now, this isn't just some policy paper, it's an official strategy that could genuinely reshape global trade and energy. So, let's dive in and break down what's actually inside. And just so we're all on the same page, this is the real deal. It was officially signed into law by a presidential decree back on October 26, 2020. This isn't some academic proposal or a think tank's wish list. Nope. This is a formal, signed, and sealed roadmap, and it details exactly how Moscow plans to secure its future in a region it sees as absolutely vital on the world stage. So that begs the question, right? Why this intense focus? Why pour so much effort into a 15-year master plan for this huge frozen frontier? Well, it really boils down to two things. On one side, you've got this incredible, massive opportunity, and on the other, you've got equally massive risk.
All right, so let's start with the stakes, because to really get a handle on this strategy, you've got to understand just how vital the Arctic already is for Russia's economy, and really for its entire future.
Get this. Just let this first number sink in for a second. Over 80% of Russia's natural gas is already being produced in its Arctic zone. The Arctic isn't some future play. It is the absolute pumping heart of Russia's energy economy today.
And, well, it's not just gas. You can add another 17% of all Russian oil to that pile. So when you put those two numbers together, it's pretty clear that this whole region is basically the engine room for the entire national economy. Okay, but the strategic value here goes way beyond just what you can dig out of the ground. The plan puts a huge emphasis on the Northern Sea Route. That's the shipping lane connecting Europe and Asia. As the Arctic ice continues to melt, this route is becoming more and more viable, and its importance is just exploding. I mean, by 2019, it was already handling over 31 million tons of cargo. And if you think that's impressive, just look at what they think is still out there. The document points to assessments that the Arctic continental shelf holds a strategic reserve of over 85 trillion cubic meters of gas and 17 billion tons of oil. This, right here, is what they're banking on for the future. But of course, with all this massive potential comes some equally massive challenges. This strategy isn't just some rosy, optimistic development plan, it's also a surprisingly honest look at the serious risks they're up against in the high north. First up, the strategy jumps right into the biggest environmental threat, climate change. It notes that the Arctic is warming up to 2.5 times faster than the rest of the planet. And this creates this wild paradox, right? On one hand, melting ice is literally opening up these new shipping routes. But on the other, it's threatening to completely destroy the infrastructure that's built on that permafrost, which is now, well, not so perma anymore. And the problems don't stop with the climate. The strategy is surprisingly candid about all the internal problems. We're talking about people packing up and leaving, a real quality of life gap compared to the rest of the country, infrastructure that's just not up to snuff, major delays in key projects like icebreakers, and on top of all that, a rising potential for international conflict. Okay, so you've got the high stakes, you've got these huge challenges, so what's the plan? What's the solution? Well, this brings us right to the core of the strategy, a really comprehensive, multi-pronged approach designed to tackle these problems head-on. So they've broken the whole thing down into 3 main pillars. First up, social development, which is all about making the Arctic a better place for people to actually live. Then you've got economic development, focused on unlocking all that natural wealth. And finally, infrastructure, which is the physical backbone you need to support the other two. So how do you convince people to actually stay there or even move there? Well, the plan is pretty direct about it. Modernize the healthcare system, improve schools and access to education, use state support to build new housing, make life less isolated by subsidizing flights. It even specifically includes protections for the culture and languages of 19 different indigenous minority groups. All right, now how do you get the economy humming? The plan is to create a special economic zone with some major tax breaks and other goodies to attract private investment. The goals here are big: tap into new oil and gas fields, massively crank up the production of liquefied natural gas, and get this, even start up an Arctic tourism industry, cruise ships and all. And of course, none of that social or economic stuff can happen without the third crucial pillar, infrastructure. And we're not just talking about a few new roads here. This is a massive build-out. We're talking integrated port development,
new railways, and even laying undersea fiber optic cables across the Arctic to connect all these remote places. So when you pull back, you see that all of this development, the social programs, the economic incentives, the new infrastructure, it's all serving one bigger ultimate goal, and that's national security in the region. And when it comes to security, the strategy basically has two sides of the same coin. On the one side, you have what you'd call hard power, that's building up the military, getting the modern weapons for the cold, and developing bases. But then on the other side, it really leans into soft power, pushing to keep the Arctic a territory of peace and being active in international groups like the Arctic Council. Yeah, the hard power stuff is pretty straightforward. The goals are to restructure the armed forces for Arctic operations, get them the latest weapons designed for extreme cold, and build out the bases and supply lines they need to really project power across that vast region. But again, to balance all that military talk, the document keeps coming back to this idea of cooperation. It explicitly calls for creating mutually beneficial partnerships with other countries. The message is pretty clear. They believe true security comes from having both military strength and stable diplomatic relationships. So this all sounds huge, but how is it actually supposed to unfold? This isn't just a vague wish list. It's a phased plan with a super clear timeline and really specific, measurable targets that are supposed to define what success looks like come 2035. Okay, so the whole thing is broken down into 3 stages. The first phase, which ran through 2024, was all about laying the groundwork and getting those new economic mechanisms going. The stage we're in now, running to 2030, is all about achieving year-round navigation along the entire Northern Sea route. And that final stage, from 2031 to 2035, that's when they really plan to scale things up into a globally competitive powerhouse. And when you look at the actual numbers they're aiming for, wow, they are seriously ambitious. I mean, look at this. They want to raise the life expectancy in the region by almost a decade, boost LNG production by more than 10 times, and more than quadruple the cargo volume on the Northern Sea route. The sheer scale of this vision is it's staggering. So, this all leaves us with one big final question, doesn't it? Russia has this incredibly ambitious, detailed plan, but the Arctic is an unforgiving place with just immense challenges. So, over the next decade, will this grand strategy actually transform the Arctic, or will the harsh realities of the Arctic end up transforming the strategy?